And we're live, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Electrek Podcast. I'm Fred Lambert, your host, and I'm joined by Seth Wintraub. How you doing, Seth?
I'm good. I get a Model 3 today, maybe.
Yeah, not only do you got a Model 3, but you're getting your own Model 3 today, supposedly.
Hopefully.
It's been a while, so we don't know for sure. There's been a few delays. But you also got to drive one all week, too, back in California. So that must have been a good experience for you.
Yeah, that was awesome. Tesla gave us a Model 3 to drive around. Steven, Abner, and I were at Google I.O. covering it for 9 to 5 Google. So that was awesome.
Yeah. So did you get to drive it before? Like, was it your first time?
I've driven it once, and I had driven in it at that unveiling event, but not really ever, behind the wheel for a long period of time. So that was pretty cool. I was very surprised how light and nimble it felt. Just generally speaking, and also how little battery we used during we were driving around San Francisco for the better part of 3 days. And I think we only, we needed to charge. Well, we didn't even need to charge, but we only took off like 100 miles. And usually, this is California weather compared to New York and California highways versus New York highways.
Mm-hmm.
But we actually got the exact mileage that Tesla said we were getting versus the Model X in New York, which, you have to drive very delicately to get even close to the expected mileage. So that makes me excited for getting this car.
Yeah, for sure. It's a much more efficient vehicle when you coming from a Model X.
Yeah.
And you save like 1,000 pounds, more than that, like 1,500 pounds maybe.
Yeah, I think it's 1,000 over the Model S, and then another whatever that is over the Model X.
Yeah, and so that makes it a much more efficient vehicle. So even with a smaller battery pack, you get much more range out of it. But yeah, so you're getting your own one later today, and I'm sure we're gonna talk about it next week with your old delivery experience.
Yeah.
But speaking of delivery experience, we could start talking about the Model 3 being delivered today for the first time in Canada. So the Model 3 is officially going international now, not just in the US. Some Canadian reservation holders that have been waiting for the car for a long time too are getting the car today.
So basically, I'm like a Canadian.
Yeah. They waited just at the right time, and so yeah. What we've been speculating mainly about Canadian deliveries is how Tesla is going to handle its rollout strategy based on trying to optimize the federal tax credit back in the US. But the more it goes, it doesn't seem to be that much of a part of Tesla's strategy at this point. We might be mistaken, but like Tesla is still they haven't sent out a new batch of invitation in the US in the past 2 weeks. So that could be an indicator. If that trend continues over the next 2-3 weeks, then we can start to be more suspicious about that, and we could start see a real slowdown in deliveries for the end of the quarter. But otherwise, like Seth is getting his own today, and it looks like there's still plenty of vehicles going to delivery centers all over the country. So if there's a slowdown, it's not about the deliveries right now. It's more about turning reservation into orders for the rest of the US. So we might see more invites to configure in Canada, though, and we've seen one just a week ago. So I think there's still the argument. There's still an argument to be made about this optimizing with Canadian deliveries, I think.
Yeah, basically we're looking at another month and a half, or close to a month and a half, I guess. It's May 11th today, so they have the rest of May and the rest of June to not deliver their 200,000th car in the U.S.
Yeah.
As long as they can defer that to January 1st, then Tesla will have another month of the $7,500 U.S. tax credit before it drops down to $3,750.
Yeah, and that can be worth millions and millions and millions of dollars if Tesla achieve its 5,000 Model 3 per week's production rate, which now looks like they might be pretty serious about hitting the target, because we know that Tesla introducing new option on the Model 3 was very dependent on Tesla hitting the target, And now Elon said today that they're gonna open up the orders for the first new variation of the Model 3. We're talking about the dual motor and the performance version, and probably the white interior too, as we understand. And so, if well, they said the opening order, so it doesn't mean that the deliveries will happen in July, but they are aiming for those orders to end up into deliveries in July. So if that's the case, it looks like Elon is pretty confident right now that they're gonna hit the 5,000. Otherwise, they would be creating a lot of delays for the people that are gonna place those orders next week. At the end of next week, he said, because we know that normally Tesla, when they open up an order on the Model 3, they are looking for 4 to 8 weeks for deliveries. I know that's not exactly what happened for you, but
No, no.
uh,
Actually, 4 to 6 weeks is what I was told. And
yeah, 48 is Canada. Yeah, you're right. So for 4 to 6 week, that's what they're telling reservation holder in the US when they're transferring their reservation into an actual order and placing that $5,000 deposit before they take delivery. So yeah, now of course a lot of speculation about what's going to be the pricing of those vehicles, what's going to be the spec of those vehicles. And so we're going to have the confirmation next week, probably. So we won't go too much in detail, maybe just a little quick prediction or something like that. But I think the most important thing is that if they're going to finally release those specs and pricing, and we've been asking for those for a while now. So even though they weren't actually taking orders for them, I think they should have released that information a long time ago, because it it makes people that are placing order for the current version of Model 3 take much more educated purchasing decision, right?
yeah, I mean, right now a lot of people are on the fence. Like I know I was, and I know you are about like, well, a couple questions. Like one, how much extra is the all-wheel drive version going to cost? How what are the specs of that? And then more importantly, what are the specs of the performance version and cost of the performance version? So if the performance version is absurd, if it costs $10,000 or $20,000 more, I don't think a lot of people are going to take that jump, because the all-wheel drive version has to be faster than the two-wheel drive version. And the two-wheel drive version, they're getting 4.6 0 to 60s, even though Tesla says it's over 5 seconds. So like it's got to be, all-wheel drive's got to be less than 4.6 seconds. So you're already talking about a really fast car, and then, but
It has to
faster than
be
that.
in practice, but they might advertise it differently. That's the other thing too. So
That's true.
we're gonna take those specs next week with a grain of salt, because I mean, what can they announce? Like if they announce like 4 seconds or something like that, then you're getting pretty close to like a Model S, and we know that they don't want to try to cannibalize the sales of the Model S with the Model 3 too much. So it's really going to be weird, I think. But yeah, the other thing, of course, like so in my case, I knew for a fact I was gonna wait for the all-wheel drive no matter what. So that when I got my invite to configure, that wasn't too big of a difference. But now it's more about, now that I know that the performance version is going probably the same time as the all-wheel drive, now I'm taking I have a decision to make between the performance version and the all-wheel drive. And yeah, so the big question is how much more expensive the performance version will be over the all-wheel drive. I think most people assume that the all-wheel drive is going to be less than $5,000 on an option, since it was 5,000 for the Model S back when all-wheel drive wasn't standard on Model S. Now it is. You cannot buy one without a dual motor all-wheel drive. So it has to be 5,000 or less. I think that's a safe assumption.
I agree.
I predict probably around $4,000 gonna make sense. Maybe even
Okay.
a little less. But I think Tesla, of course, is trying to optimize the gross margin on Model 3. We know that they're losing money on it right now, and they want to turn a profit in Q3 and Q4. So I think like the option might be expensive. So even though I think $3,000 might make more sense for a dual motor Model 3, I wouldn't be surprised if it's closer to 4,000. So for me in Canada, that's closer to 5,000. So it's starting to add up. Then the performance version. I mean, performance version is anybody's guess, I think, at this point. If and normally the other interesting too is that normally Tesla, the way that they sell a performance version vehicle, if we go back historically with the Model S and X, they bundle up all the option on it. So you're sort of forced to take a bunch of option with the. So for example, the of course the option on the Model 3 right now already pretty much bundled up, so it could end up just the same thing. But right now the premium interior package on the Model 3, it's probably going to be standard on the performance version too. Probably on the all-wheel drive too, unless well they're going to be the white interior that's probably going to be offered at the same time too. But I think the white interior is going to be part of the premium package, right? It's not.
Yeah, I think. Well, what if they made the white a performance only option? That would be kind of.
Yeah, well, that would be a good way to sell it, actually, to
Mhm.
sell the performance version and make, again, with the focus on the gross margin, that would make sense. But I mean, a fully equipped Model 3 right now is already what, close to $60,000? Like it's 59,000 dollars all equipped.
Yeah,
Uh, so
I mean, if you include
remove
wheels, we're assuming new wheels are going to come with the performance
and with
version,
the
right?
autopilot I'm talking to. So forget the
Yeah.
autopilot because it doesn't really plays into the performance of the car. So $50,000 is like a fully equipped Model 3 without autopilot. So how much more can you go and get close to Model S? I mean, 10,000, 10,000 would make sense, I think. And what do you put in a performance Model 3 too? Like normally we're just talking about a more powerful rear-wheel drive motor
Yeah,
with.
and so we know that it's not going to be air suspension.
Yeah, right. That's a good point too. We forgot to mention about that. But when Elon on Twitter confirmed that dual motor and performance are coming in July, well, he already said that it's not going to. He said that they're going to open up the order for it next week for deliveries in July or production in July. He's also said that air suspension is going to only come next year. So normally, um, Tesla package the air suspension with the performance version. So performance version and air suspension came together. Won't be the case for the Model 3 or the performance Model 3, or at least the performance Model 3 for the first year. That's what it sounds like. I don't think most people will be mad about that. Like, well, you said you had a weird experience with the suspension on Model 3 this week,
Oh yeah,
but
so I'll just really quickly. It's a newer one, so there has been an update to the Model 3 suspension. But this is a newer VIN, and driving it on dirt road that's near the Shoreline Amphitheater parking lot, you would get like these when you hit the bumps. It reminded me of when I had a car back in college that had like really bad struts and shocks, and it made like knocking noises when you'd hit the bumps, and it wasn't like the bump; it was actually like the suspension. So I don't know if that was just a bad unit or what, but like I hope the one I get doesn't have that same issue.
yeah, but also coil suspension are often preferred by people that like performance handling and this type of driving. So we're gonna see, but at the same time, we're already seeing aftermarket modification for the suspension of the Model 2 becoming popular with performance handling aficionados. So I wouldn't be surprised that some of the aftermarket Tesla tuners, like the Unplugged Performance and the T Sport line of the world, start to get on that trend a little bit.
Yeah,
And
just
also, yeah,
just in case you're a SpaceX fan, we're watching the launch of the today's thing go, and there it goes. Uh, just a brief interlude here
yeah, it
for
looks like
the live people.
it cleared the tower and everything, take off. There's still gonna be a few steps in the way, but normally when they clear the tower, it's already pretty good. But we wouldn't be angry with you if you want to finish it before coming back to the Electrek podcast. But we need to focus on our article this
Yeah,
week. Normally, we're also a big fan of watching the SpaceX launches.
yeah. If I'm not responsive, it's because I'm just watching that off on the side. But anyway, so let's get back to Tesla Model 3.
Yeah, well, I mean, we pretty much covered like we said with the performance version and the dual motor. We're gonna probably talk about it all next week anyway when they release the specs, and we're gonna have much better information. But we know I don't think there's gonna be any big surprises in terms of pricing. So probably like 4,000, maybe 10,000 to 15,000 for the performance version, which just going to be a gross margin grabber. I mean, it's not. It's sort of bigger real motors. Maybe there's going to be a few different modification things, but I would be surprised if there's anything significant. But in terms of specs, if we're talking, the focus is going to be on acceleration, like all of Tesla's performance vehicle. Um, I think the all-wheel drive is going to be advertised in the 4 seconds, but I wouldn't be surprised if the actual performance is closer to 3 seconds and like the high 3 seconds, something like that.
Any
And
chance they get near the Model S top speed of 2.3 right now?
the top speed is the 155. Is it
No, I
155?
mean the 0 to 60.
Okay, the 0 to 60, yeah, but the performance version, like I was talking with just all-wheel drive. All-wheel drive, I'm saying like 4 seconds advertised, in the 4
Okay.
seconds advertised, and probably in the 3 seconds in practice. But for the performance version, I think it's gonna be advertised in the 3 seconds. But like maybe could get close to the 2 seconds, like probably not 2.4, like you can actually get in a Model S P100D with ludicrous mode activated, but certainly possible. I mean, the car won't be more than like 3,900 pounds. Like it won't be more than that. Like I won't be surprised if it's into more than that. And it's still gonna pack like probably over 500 horsepower. Kilowatts. So pretty much the same thing. Right? So yeah, I won't be surprised if it get close to that. It's gonna be a
Yeah.
lot more fun to handle too than the Model S. I mean, it feels so much lighter. I mean, it's gonna be a fun car to take to cross even and stuff like that. That's for sure.
I mean, how do you feel about the Model S getting cannibalized by the Model 3? That's something like the first time I rode in the Model 3, I was like, I like this a lot more than the Model S. I think Tesla's sales of Model S are going to be impacted.
Yeah, well, I do like a lot the instrument cluster in the Model S. Like, I love my navigation system, like right in front there in the Model S. That's like a big advantage a lot of. So I think I'm gonna miss that in the Model 3. Um, but yeah, I mean, in terms simply on performance, I get it. I get the concern for from a Tesla investor perspective and stuff like that. But not until like its production is good. They still have too much backlog in order that if you want a Tesla right now, your chances are just so much better with a Model S than it is with Model 3.
Right.
And that has a big impact. Like people forget how much, even though it's an expensive product, like impulse buying affects all kind of classes in society, the rich and the poor. So rich people, just like anybody else, when they get an idea that they want to buy a certain car, like they want it right now, they don't want to wait weeks and stuff like that. So I think for the meantime, it won't be a big problem. And of course, there's always the speculation that Tesla's going to update the Model S2, and then that will fix the issue. So,
right.
Of course, we haven't confirmed that yet, but
speaking of that and transitioning, we saw Tesla released a new video this week, which was quite popular.
I thought you were going to use that as a segue for the update of the interior of the Model S.
Oh yeah,
that would have been a good segue.
Wait, which way am I going to segue here?
But yeah, if we go to the mystery, the video, the mystery car, Tesla. It was weird that he called it the Tesla quarterly all ends video. Did you get that? Did you get like what does that mean? Like,
I don't know. Do they do quarterly videos? I don't even know if they're videos.
Yeah, that was a first for me. So I'm saying like, is that gonna be a standard now every quarter? But if that's the case, like that particular video wasn't about the last quarter alone. I mean, it was much more than that. It was a Tesla Semi. Tesla Semi was unveiled like quarter before. True. It was a Roadster. It's like pretty much the last year mainly.
Right.
But yeah, so the thing that caught most people's attention was the quick shot inside the Tesla design studio, and you see a car partly under wrap, and no one can exactly make what that car is. And of course, just based on the timing, people are thinking Model Y, because like that would make sense to be in the design studio right now. That would be something that Tesla is working on in terms of the design aspect.
It's kind of low though for a Model Y. I mean, at least what I think the Model Y is going to be.
Yeah, I think that was my first thought too. But there's clearly parts missing on the car too. So maybe they just like it's the way that the wrap is falling on the missing parts. Okay, and also the angle is weird. It could be higher than it seems based on the
Right.
angle.
It's a low angle.
Yeah, but it could be pretty much anything really. Like we said, a Model S refresh could be something, but uh, the door seems weird for a Model S refresh. So like it could be also a really early prototype or something. So it's not doesn't seem completely complete. Uh, like it could be anything. So I mean, it's fun. It's a tease, but like we don't have much to go on here.
Yeah, it's not like Tesla accidentally let these guys shoot. They looked at it to make sure that there was
Yeah,
just enough to tease you and not enough to actually get
yeah.
any
They look
info.
at the footage a bunch of times, saying, "Oh, maybe too much this time." They reshoot it. Oh, let me just pull the
Right.
wrap a little bit underneath here, and it
This
was
isn't this isn't a happy accident. This is a
yeah,
purposeful, like
yeah.
enticing thing.
Clearly. Another interesting shot in that video was the Roadster. So we got a little bit more footage of the
Yeah.
Roadster
In the
in
daytime.
action. And yeah, the biggest difference is a view from the cockpit in daytime, which we never had before. So Seth got a test ride in it during the event in November, but it was super dark. You don't see much. Now you have a way better idea of the interior of the car with that shot from the cockpit. You see that you have the same HVAC system, the same air ventilation system as the Model 3 is in the car. The steering wheel does look so weird though, with because there's no instrument cluster, and you see the steering shaft just coming out of the dash.
Yeah, it looks very. It looks. I mean, it looks a little bit like Knight Rider, but it looks also a little beta. You know what I mean? It
Yeah,
doesn't seem
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
they finished
Yeah,
what they're going for. But maybe that's what they're going for. Is like really Spartan.
yeah. I don't know, and yeah, and they're saying that the steering wheel is going to be in the production car, so it's not. Even though it's just a prototype right now, that they're saying that it's something that's gonna. But didn't they say the same thing about the Model 3? Oh no, that was no, that was a screen, and they ended up actually doing it. So,
Yeah,
and in terms of the screen here, you can see. So it's unlike the Model 3, it's not it's vertical instead of being horizontal, and so closer to what we are seeing right now on the Model S and X, but clearly different. I want to say it's curved, right? It's inside a car, like it's curved with the dash.
I can't tell if that's just the camera, the way the camera angle went. I don't remember it being curved that much when I was inside. I mean, it seemed very subtly curved, but um, well, you know, the bigger picture for me on the different displays is like Tesla engineers have to like go with three different, like, you know, if they do the Roadster, they've got the Model S and X vertical, and then the second screen. They've got the Model 3 portrait screen and OS, and now they have this third OS. And it seems to me, I mean, it's kind of strange that they're so loosey goosey with these things. Like it would be pretty easy to put in a much cooler looking portrait display that was exactly like the Model 3 or a Model S display. So this is like a third version of the OS that they're showing here, which is kind of nuts.
Yeah, well, it's still like they could change it too. Like
Right.
we don't know. It's not. The third thing that was interesting was the shot inside like a warehouse, or maybe like a factory or any building of some sort anyway, of a Model 3, a black, matte black Model 3 that looked like one of the Alpha prototype, but
Yeah.
it seems to be with probably an updated powertrain though. They made the shot in one way to focus on the wheel, and you see the red caliper, which is a signature of a Tesla's performance vehicles, and also the shot of the front wheel. So maybe indicating like it's a front drive motor. So
Right. And you know, will matte be one of the options for the performance vehicles, like an exclusive paint job for that would be That'd be worth
Yes.
some money right there, you know.
Yeah, I think that would make sense. I think they should do something like that, but it could also just be the fact that they use the alpha prototype and just updated the powertrain with something that either a dual motor or a performance one, most likely a performance one because of the again of the calipers. But yeah, if they would bring back the and Elon actually said it at some point. He said that he was so surprised by um, the reception of the Black Matic prototype when they unveiled the alpha version of the car that he was going to bring it to production, which he didn't do with the first production run for the long range battery pack Model 3. So maybe he's still not he's coming back to that original promise and going with the performance version only. Of course, it's a nightmare to clean and it's it's tough to keep clean, but
And you don't have kids and pets.
yeah, well, it's the exterior of the car.
Yeah.
It's not that big of a deal, but yeah, I mean, it looks just so cool with the tinted windows too. But
Yeah.
I mean, something to keep in mind. Anyway, you can go check the video on Tesla's YouTube. It's just it's worth the 2 minutes to
Yeah,
watch.
it's a good like get hyped about. You know, I get it that it's like an internal video as much as an external video.
Hmm.
It's like, hey, get hyped about what we're doing. We're doing, you know, energy storage. We're doing solar. We're doing crazy cars, and here's the reactions of people, and everybody loves us, and
Yep.
we're awesome.
Yeah, at the end with the woman testing the Roadster and going only, and they cut the video at the
Right.
end.
I wish
It's
they would have
pretty
put me
good.
in there. I'm surprised my
No, everybody got mad at your reaction in that
I
video.
know. That's what I was gonna say. I
You
was
said
like,
that you look so unimpressed by it, and you
well, I was trying not to like scream like I did last
forget
time.
curse or anything like that. Well,
Right.
I mean, just the P100. Yeah, I didn't get a test ride in the Roadster, but I don't have a reaction, at least not a reaction during the acceleration because you're just completely stuck. So I have to imagine that with 1.9 seconds, it's even worse than that. So.
Yeah, you're just basically trying not to like pass out.
Yeah, and I have the same thing in a roller coaster. Like people, it's good to scream when you're on roller coasters and like that. And I have the complete reverse reaction where I just go completely silent and just
Try to deal.
yeah try to deal with the G-force. But yeah, that was a cool video to come out this week. But yeah, the other thing that we were gonna talk about before going to that video was the slight Model S and X interior update. So we got that tip this week that Tesla updated the interior with somewhat minor updates. Really, we're talking about all the interior trims are being updated to a graphite finish, a darker graphite finish than they were before. So it's going a bit more darker, a little bit more graphite looking.
That's a
For
good
the
look. I think it's a good look, especially for summer. Uh, I would like if that was a Model 3 option, I would definitely take it.
Yeah, well, darker is also look normally a little bit more minimalist and a little more rich, a little bit more luxurious, maybe. And that's, of course, something that a complaint that has come back a lot about the Model S interior over the years, especially for people coming from other luxury vehicles.
Yep.
The other thing is a new bundle, a new interior bundle. So, if you don't know, last year Tesla ended up bundling all the interior options. So instead of yourself choosing the trim, choosing the headliner, choosing the seats, I mean the materials for each of those components of the interior, and then they bundle it up together in different option that they themselves curate. So it's allow them to streamline the production process, but also the option itself. So sometimes people just choose stupid things that don't look good, and Tesla doesn't want that out there. So now they have only combinations of interior materials that they like themselves. And the new ones is called the cream premium. Well, there was already a cream premium, meaning that the cream leather or fake leather or whatever you want to call it. Um, but now the finish with them is with oak finish on the dashboard and on the center console, and no, there's nothing on the door. No, it's mainly the dash and the center console. It's a lighter oak instead of a oak with a dark finish that it was there before. So no, nothing massive, nothing really impressive, but a slight little update that we wanted to let you know, guys. I'm moving on. I think we are to the brutal review right now, right? So that
Yeah.
was actually the biggest article of the week that we had at Electrek, and we reported it back on Saturday. That's something that has been coming along for a while now, but we didn't know just how serious Elon was about this. So he's been talking about for a while that there was a problem with contractors and subcontractors working at Tesla, mainly at Tesla's Fremont factory, and he talked about doing a complete review of them to just keep the ones that he considered excellent. And so that was back when we leaked an email that he sent out to employees almost a month ago, really. Then he talked about it again last week on the earnings calls, and he talked about them being barnacles on Tesla ships. Uh, but what it culminated to past Saturday on an email that we leaked is they are doing a full review of them, but the way they're doing it is that each contractor working at Tesla needs to be vouched for by an official Tesla employee in order
Right.
to keep
So
them
that
the job.
that puts the onus on the employees to make sure that the contractors are doing good work and being honest. And by doing that, the employee will vet the contractor to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing theoretically, so that when somebody catches the contractor not doing what they're supposed to be doing, then the employee also gets in trouble. So it's kind
Yeah.
of putting responsibility to the employees.
Which was always the case anyway. So who hires those contractors? The Tesla
Yeah, that are
employees
just like
hiring the
kind of just
contractors.
wandering around,
Yeah,
like
it's not like
collecting paychecks.
yeah, it doesn't work like that. So uh, if anyone's gonna be vouching for them, it has to be like the Tesla managers that hired them in the first place. I think those are the one that should be worried right now. And well, of course, the contractor should be worried too because it's pretty stern statement that he said. I mean, I'm gonna read the email to you just so you understand the language he's using here. Uh, Please also you start by referencing another email, but that not that important. Please note my comment below about contractor companies and consultants. I extended the performance evaluation deadline to provide more opportunity to demonstrate excellence, but now the time is up. Please send a note to HR before Monday justifying the excellence, necessity, and trustworthiness by individual, not just the contractor company as a whole, of every non-Tesla person who has a badge access to our buildings or network access to our system. By default, anyone who does not have a Tesla employee putting their reputation on the line for them will be denied access to our facilities and networks on Monday morning. This applies worldwide. Time to scrub off the barnacles. Thanks, Elon. So that was last Monday. So presumably there were a bunch of Tesla contractors that didn't have access to the buildings and to the network this week.
Hmm. It kind of baffles the mind though, like who's getting contractors that they wouldn't stand up for anyway.
Well, it gets out of control sometimes. Like depending on the scope of a contract, like sometimes contractor will hire subcontractors,
Right.
and so it becomes a sort of a game of just all the little work you can do and still get that paycheck.
Right, that's a
So
good point. I mean, this is a good way to get rid of subcontractors because if you don't have a Tesla employee directly vouching for you, then you are a subcontractor, I guess,
mhm.
because a contractor's vouch, a contractor brought you in.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what that means. That's a good point.
And it's also like the way he did it is pretty harsh, but it's also a great way to just keep the very best one because no one's gonna put a quoting reputation on the line for a subpar contractor. I mean, if I were a Tesla employee and I'm facing this situation and I'm working with a few contractor, I mean, I'd be very careful to send that email to HR with someone that I have some doubts about their contribution to the company. But yeah, so that was worldwide. So the focus was people were taking Fremont, especially with the Model 3. And we know that Tesla at times employed hundreds of contractors at Fremont, so temporary employees that are part of an agency that Tesla is bringing in to get more workers in the factory to try to ramp up the Model 3 production. and we know that Tesla is still hiring a lot too in order to ramp up that production. So it could be a significant number of people, and also it worked with the fact that again Tesla was working to increase the margin on the Model 3, which was still negative during the last quarter. And of course, when you cut jobs, you cut costs, and if you cut costs, then you can achieve a higher margin if you can still maintain your production rate with those fewer hands at work in Fremont and elsewhere. Apparently, too, it wasn't just free. It wasn't just Fremont. Um, well, speaking of Elon too, he did quite a big purchase of stock this week. Well,
Not really
not that
huge,
big.
but in Elon
Yeah,
money,
not,
but
yeah. Relative to his current stake, it's not huge, but it's still a $10 million stock buy in one day that he did this week. But the most interesting thing is that he did it right after calling out the shorts, people that are trying to bet against Tesla stock. And so there's a lot of different ways to look at it. Of course, the shorts decide as a way for Elon to initiate that short squeeze that he's himself predicting. So trying to make it a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you will. And of course, with the $10 million buy, it's not that big of a direct impact. There's of course the indirect impact of him investing in the stock right now could influence other people to put more money in it. But I mean, Elon already is so has so much interest into Tesla stock that him adding 10 million to that interest, I mean, it's not doesn't have that big an impact. Like it's
it's
not,
really not. It's symbolic, and
yeah,
I think he wanted the Securities and Exchange form to go public, and I think it was a sign to yeah the shareholders and the shorts alike that he thinks it's a buying opportunity.
yeah. That's mostly it. The other thing that I thought was interesting from it is also the fact that due to insider trading rules, uh, it might indicate that there's not going to be any big non-public information to come out in the near future. Otherwise, it could be seen as an issue in terms of insider trading rules. Though it's not like there's some room to play with those rules. It mostly have to do with selling. If you sell stock right before bad news come out, and you can prove that he knew the bad news, that looks the worst. If you're buying into something and he doesn't sell right after, for example, there's big news that come out, normally you don't come down on you for it. So it's not a complete indicator that nothing big is going to come out that has been unannounced yet. And anyway, I mean, Elon pretty much pre-announced anything. So there's an announcement about an announcement coming. So if he hasn't pre-announced anything, there's nothing that's gonna come out next week. It's not like Tesla's gonna surprise us with the Model Y next week.
But I think Tesla is going to say something about that gigawatt project or something.
He said a few months, so it might not be like that soon. I don't think it'd be an issue if it's a few months from now. Like the thing next week is gonna be the Model 3, like the new version. That I mean, it sounds like they're just gonna open the order, and we're gonna open. You go to your Tesla account, you open your design studio, and you get the specs there. It doesn't even sound like it's gonna be a big announcement from it. Like
Which
normally
is
with
weird, right? Like,
yeah,
seems like that would be worth having at least a small event, like an analyst call or something.
like the dual motor event was huge.
Right, the
I
D
know
one.
it's not that big because there's already a dual motor car for Tesla, so it's just bringing that to Model 3. But it's still like a big update to Model 3. Like it's just two new version of it, two more powerful version of it, all-wheel drive version of it. So maybe not an event, but if like probably like some press material or something like that we can work with. But I don't know. We'll see. We didn't check in with Tesla about that yet. He just was just announcing it
Oh yeah,
today.
for what it's worth, when I was in at the headquarters, I asked if I could check out the all-wheel drive version, and they told me no. So
Big surprise there.
yeah.
Uh, the other thing we can move on to is the accident this week that ended up making the national news, and we want to talk about that because we had a little controversy, a little feud on Twitter about it with another member of the Tesla community, and we want to clear this up. You can go read the article itself first, and it hasn't been modified since. It's exactly the same that it was before. The story itself. So there was an accident earlier this week in Florida where two teens were killed in a Model S crash. Uh, the police is investigating, probably speed being an issue. So they were in a residential area and they apparently lost control, went off road, hit a concrete wall, and the car caught on fire, burned. Not clear how they died, if they died from the fire or if they were killed on impact. We don't know. Was a 13 that was expelled from the vehicle that was during the impact. And last we heard, he was still in the hospital, not in a critical condition, but and still gravely injured.
Likely, that indicates that they were going quite fast if he was like thrown from the vehicle upon impact.
Yeah,
And also, it was not in autopilot, or at least Tesla does not believe it was in autopilot, just by the circumstances of the.
Yeah, the autopilot would have been locked at 35 miles per hour in that area, so it doesn't make sense that they were going 35 miles per hour in that residential zone. So anyway, we just to give you some background, I got a bunch of tips during the day about that, and I just didn't report on it because I didn't think it was really newsworthy. A crash. Sometimes I do report on crashes, but I only report on them if I think there's something to learn from them. If there's something to learn about Tesla safety features, either the active safety feature, the passive safety feature, something like that. If there's a fire, like if there's just a fire from a crash, I don't think it's a big deal because of course catch on fire after a crash quite often, whether they're electric or not. If they catch on fire, though, without a crash, so that we're gonna report on, and we have in the past. Like there was the one in France when the car they were just having a test drive and the car caught on fire.
Norway, wasn't it?
No, that wasn't France.
Okay.
But there was also no, you're referring to the one while charging too. So that's a big one too. We're gonna report on that if the car catch on fire with charging, because that has to indicate a problem of some sort, either with the charger or the car. But that wasn't the case here. So there was nothing I thought that was really noteworthy about the crash. It was, of course, a tragic accident. Two teens died in that accident, but it's not that it's not doesn't add anything to our readers, I think, unless they're part of that community. So that's why it's okay for local news, I think, to report on that, because they are a member of the community that died in our accident. That makes sense for local news to report it. When we decided to report it was after national media picked up the story. So national media ran the story, and that's where I have a red light that goes on for me. Is that why is national media picking up that story? There was 100 other people that died on U.S. road that day in other cars and didn't make national news. It's not local news, so that doesn't make sense in terms of a community-based basis. So that has to be another reason why they pick up that story. And of course, that reason we know is because it's Tesla, and Tesla gets clicks, and media works on clicks. So they run with a story, and then they link it to the autopilot accidents and things like that. So that's when we decided to run the story, and we ran the story with the lead. Well, the headline itself is tragic fatal crash in Tesla Model S goes national because Tesla, meaning like because of the name Tesla. And we so we of course explain just that you guys know how Electrek work, our article format work. We start with the facts, and then we go with Electrek Stake, and Electrek Stake explains our view on the situation. And of course, our view is that it doesn't make sense for the national news to pick this up because there was hundreds of other car fires that day. There was 100 on average base. There's 100 people that dies on US road per day. So the only reason that why that was picked up is because it's involving a Tesla vehicle, and it gives a false perspective, of course, that there's a problem with Tesla's cars because it gets picked up in the national news as if there's something else that is important about the accident other than two people dying, which again, like I said, it makes sense with the local media because they're a member of the community. Anyway, we try to give our perspective into that accident because of it, on the fact that it ended up on national news. And a member of the Tesla community known as
We shouldn't name names.
No, we don't name names.
We
I mean,
should.
he did it publicly, so I don't feel bad about naming his
I
name.
don't think we should.
Okay. Anyway, you guys, if you've seen it, you know about it. But he's a prominent member of the Tesla community. He has his own podcast about Tesla and everything. Um, he called us an hypocrite for making that post and compared us directly to the same people that we were criticizing, meaning the mainstream media. And I mean, I think there's a big issue with that, starting with the fact that what the mainstream media did and what we did is not comparable. And think, I mean, the only thing that is comparable is that we, of course, we're both getting clicks from it, but that's not the point of it. That's just like a consequences of making a valuable post in our case. But what the mainstream media did, they didn't point out the fact that there wasn't any value in the post going national because of other than having Tesla in the name, especially because, like we said, the only reason they're doing it is because Tesla is getting clicks. So just the fact that you point that out change everything, is because you're saying that we are explaining why this post is going national. National news is not explaining why they're posting it. The way they're explaining it is that, of course, it's a Tesla vehicle and they link it again to the autopilot accident and stuff like that.
Right, and they
Uh,
don't say it directly. They say like, "Oh, it's not like there was an autopilot accident a couple weeks ago, and there was
yeah,
this car fire a couple weeks ago," and they don't say that this one's like that. But
they
they
can't.
right,
Yeah.
they can't
So they just say, oh, a few weeks ago that happens. And of course,
right, and then the people put that together in their head as they're reading that, like, oh, these Teslas are unreliable and they catch on fire and they explode and kill people.
yeah. So anyway, well, what pissed me off about that, and I know a few people reach out to me after that Twitter thread and everything, is that person kept emphasizing to his following that there was no value in the post, which I think is just plainly wrong. And we know that just from the reception that they had from the post. And I got plenty of messages of people actually reaching out to those media and to those reporters saying that it wasn't right the way they reported about it. And also a bunch of people showed that our post was showing up right. If you were looking for Tesla and we're searching for Tesla, the first thing that you get was a bunch of posts about the crash. And so people will click on those posts and just read about Tesla that way in a very bad light that didn't make sense again. But our post was showing up right next to it. So if someone click on our post instead of their post, and they get instead the perspective of explaining why all those posts you're saying right now about Tesla's crash are happening, which is again because of the national news capitalizing on the Tesla crash. It, you cannot say that that's the same thing. It's completely different. Like the end result of someone that read our post and read their post is completely different. You cannot argue against that. If you read our article and you read their article, you don't come out with the same thinking about what happened. So anyway, that pissed me off. So I'm sorry for the little rant here, but I had to say it, even though Seth is making me not say the name of the person.
Yeah, so I mean, I just well, a couple of things. One, like I think you know, like we appreciate the Tesla community. We appreciate the feedback from everybody. In this case, I personally don't think the person read the article. They just kind of made an assumption based on the title and the lead, and didn't really think it through. I'm totally on your side on it. I just think that I like to see like debate rather than it seemed like that person was a little bit quick to judge and
Yeah, like
and question our motives, which
yeah, that's a problem here.
if you've been following us, you know that we don't we're not all about the clicks necessarily. I mean, we have to get paid, but we're here for the long haul, and we're trying to we're trying to talk about the nuances of the Tesla ecosystem as well as other EVs and solar and all that.
Yeah.
We're long on this whole thing, so we're not just trying to get clicks.
Yeah, that's the thing here. Like, he didn't get my attentions correctly at all. And the biggest thing, of course, is that I respected that person. I was a fan of his work, And then the first, instead of just, if he had a problem with the post, he could have just reached out to me and explained his position, and I could have explained my situation. And he didn't do that. Instead, he go publicly calling me an hypocrite for writing that. And of course, you're gonna get a bad reaction from me if you do that. There's just no way around it. And after he started saying that I started a third with him, I didn't start anything. I wrote a post and he called me an hypocrite online. So if there's any third that started, it was on his side. But anyway, we weren't looking after clicks like Seth said, because I could have written that article like half a day before that, because I got the tip like early in the morning from that, and I just didn't write it until it went national, because like I said, that was the lead of the article, is the fact it was going national. It's not the fact that it happened, even though, like I said, though, I don't want to be an hypocrite, because we do write about other Tesla crashes too that doesn't go national. We are often the first to report on them, but when we do that, we normally have an angle about a safety feature. I think that's the most important thing. But in this case, we didn't have, like, we couldn't even see the car. Like, if we had like a good pictures of the vehicle, we can maybe have some insight into what happened to the crash. But it was completely burned to the ground, so we had no idea, or no insight other than that. But yeah, that was it. Moving on, Chevy Bolt EV 2019. Did I get anyone excited yet? Do anyone get excited by
big changes afoot? They're no longer going to be electric blue, but there's going to be green mist, which
hideous.
It looks like a faded mint is what I would call it.
I've never seen a Volt. So the color is available in the Volt. Have you ever seen a Volt with that color?
No, I'll be honest. I don't think you would ever, like, I don't think anybody would pick that on purpose. I don't know.
So why are they adding into the Bolt TV?
I don't know.
You have to have those statistics, right?
I don't know.
But yeah, so the 2019 Bolt, we got the dealer documentation for the version coming later this year, and no powertrain update, no major spec update, but you have
which is fine. I think the powertrain is great.
Yeah, it's already good.
I think you throw a couple seats in there that, like, maybe are high end, and you eliminate like half the problems. Maybe some better tires, or a better tire option at least.
Less plastic in the interior, maybe, like
what they should do is have like a Buick or Cadillac version of that thing.
Like they did with the Volt and the Cadillac EVR. That went well.
That's not going to go over well.
Just too expensive, really. But yeah, other than that, like, there's this new smartphone entry system. We already saw that with the Maven car sharing system that is utilizing a lot of Bolt EV in their fleet. But now it seems like they are making that an available option for just regular buyers, which sounds a lot like maybe they're gonna open up the Maven system. That's just speculation at this point, and that's not from the documentation anymore. But it's a possibility that they could let people include their car in the Maven system, like if you're a private car owner, a lot like the Tesla network. Like Elon Musk has been talking about having both vehicles part of the fleet that are owned by Tesla, and Tesla owners being able to lend their vehicle to the Tesla network. But of course, that's just linked to the self-driving thing and everything. So Maven is not about self-driving; it's just about car sharing in general. So maybe that's a possibility. Or they could just be using the smartphone entry for people wanting to use a smartphone as the key. But the difference is that in the actual documentation, they are putting that feature under sort of a car sharing category. So that's why we were speculating on that. But no, that's pretty much it for the Chevy Bolt 2019. No pricing information, so there might be a pricing update to later this year. We're gonna have to see what. I'm gonna wait for that. Finally, there was a big survey. That's an annual survey from AAA that comes out every year, and they poll their members, and they do a yearly survey on the interest for electric vehicles from their members, and they publish this year's result, and the big number is 20%. So 20% of the people polled in that survey say that they want an electric vehicle for their next car purchase.
Yeah, so for me, that's a couple things. The the polling people. So I'm assuming those are AAA members, which I think tend toward the older, traditional folks, perhaps not maybe city dwellers or young folks who I think are more likely to embrace electric vehicles. So 20% seems low to me.
They did break down though with the generations, the
Yeah,
number.
but I just feel like if you're a AAA member, then you're automatically in this. It's like if you have a
Mm.
landline phone, right? If you have a landline phone still, then you're likely a little bit older, or you just haven't gotten rid of it yet, or whatever.
Yeah.
I think if you look at the numbers of people who have landline phones, they're probably just a little bit demographically older and more traditional. But so that's A. B, 20%. Like I was like, yeah, that's kind of. I mean, initially I thought, it's over 50%. I mean, I guess I hang out with EV buyers more often, but I think that's people who actually intend to buy a car. 20% are going to buy an EV next or plan to buy an EV next, which when you think about it, we're now at like 1%. So that seems like a pretty big jump if you think about it that way. And if you think about
Yeah,
it, AAA members, that's even bigger jump.
yeah, there's no other way to look at it. Like when I saw it, I thought, to me, it sounds like a failure. Like if a majority of people still don't see a electric vehicle as a possibility for their next car purchase, I think we still have an awareness issue. We still have a lot of work to do to uh, make people understand that EVs are a real possibility for your next car purchase. But a lot of people reach out to me saying that they thought that was great. Of course, if you look like 20%, the way this, because it depends on how you frame it. Of course, there's 20%, but the way that AAA framed it was 50 million Americans. So of course, if you think about 50 million Americans and you think about the number of EVs that are being sold per year nowadays, it looks like a giant jump. Um, but it's not maybe the ideal way to look at it, I think. The other way to look at it, it's the difference between last year's survey. So last year's survey was 15%. So it went from 15% to 20%, which is a 25% jump.
It's huge. I
It's
mean,
huge.
it's 5% of the American public
Yeah,
now,
in a
that's
year
right.
that changed their mind about EVs. So that's more encouraging, I think. But then you look at the reasons why they don't want the people that don't want an EV for their next car. The reason why, like, so unsurprisingly, we're talking about charging, we're talking about range anxiety, and especially so a lot of EV owners listen to that podcast, and we know that it's not that big of a concern for most people, really. Like, especially like they're talking about range anxiety. They're talking about literally like being on the road and not having enough range and being stuck on the road. That's a weird concern to me because you have the same thing with it's pretty much the same thing as not having enough gas and being stranded because you don't have enough gas. Of course, there's the idea that you can actually like go get some gas, like walk a few miles to a gas station and come back and everything. But I mean, that's just a big hassle anyway. Um, so if you're going, you're planning a trip and you're going on a trip, minimal planning and you're not gonna run out of range. It's like almost impossible. Like you really need to be trying to. If of course you're just going on the road and just like going whatever the road takes me, then of course that's a concern because you could end up just driving more than and being too far away from a charging station. But who does that these days? Like I haven't heard about that much. And the biggest the best example is AAA itself. So AAA last year they launched a fleet of trucks. So they have their trucks to have people that are stranded on the side of the road, the roadside assistance kind of service. And they added EV charging to those trucks. And even though they did have a few requests, they acknowledged that they didn't have as many as they thought they would. And they get 500,000 assistance requests for people running out of gas. So it's not like it's a new issue, running out of energy. It's completely normal. More about the driver than anything else. It's more about the driver than the car, I think.
Yeah, I agree. You know, it isn't brave. Like, you know, you can't, like, I know the first time I had an electric car, I had some concerns and fears, and I can't kind of make fun of people for having those same issues because they just haven't been inside an EV, and they don't know what it's like. And once you start thinking like an EV owner, like you have to say, well, look, I have 200 miles every day when I start. Is today going to be a day where I'm over 200 miles? And really, like, that's not a lot of days, right?
No.
And then, on those rare days where you're going to Florida or something crazy, then you have to start thinking about, okay, so I have 200 miles. Where am I going to need, where am I going to hit around 200 miles? And so what are my charging options at that point? And,
Yeah.
where's the nearest supercharger if you're in a Tesla, or DC fast charger if you're in a Chevy Bolt? And, you have to start thinking about it a little bit. But, like, we're talking a few days a year, unless you're, a big, crazy,
Salesperson on the road, something
salesperson
like
who
that.
drives like all day, every
Yeah.
day. And, if that's the case, like, maybe an EV isn't for you because you're like the 1% of the population that is in the middle of nowhere
Yeah.
driving, crazy all day. But
But that doesn't reflect the survey, though. That's the
right, exactly.
So they didn't. We get why some people, it doesn't make sense, but the number just don't add up. Like, a majority of people should certainly think that buying an EV as the next car makes sense. And we're taking into consideration pricing too. Of course, like, we are Tesla owners, so we're sort of biased, and that it's a lot easier with the supercharger network and everything. But if you take into consideration, so buying your next car, and most people keep their car for 5 years or more, like, in the next 5 years, it's going to be a completely different landscape. If you don't think that EV is going to be your next car, I mean, I don't think you're seeing the future of the industry right.
Yeah, your car, basically, if you buy an internal combustion engine car in 5 years, in my opinion, is going to be almost valueless. Like,
Yeah.
you're not going to get any money for that car in 5 years.
Yeah, it's not the resale value is gonna suck. You want big battery, you want big energy density in your car. You want battery capacity. That's what's gonna be valuable in the future for a resale of a car. Uh, Probably autonomous driving capacity. So that's why Tesla, I think, is a very ahead in terms of resale value. If they do manage to get that self driving capacity with their current cars.
Yeah, if you're thinking long term, if you're thinking like 5 years out, if you're thinking, 2 years out, maybe not. But, like, I think,
Yeah.
whenever those autonomous cars start hitting, if you don't have autonomy in your car, like, that's going to be a huge, huge
Oh, like
hit.
50-80% value just completely drops from it automatically, I think,
Yep.
easily. So that's why I think Tesla is ahead of the curve here. By If they can deliver on that promise that the hardware is gonna enable fully self-driving, I think that's a big plus. Way easier to pull the trigger on a car if you're aware of the self-driving future, I think.
Yeah. And I think we should end it on that, right?
Yeah, pretty much. We did a good hour last time with with our new friend Gally. We went a little over, and I know we said that Gally is gonna be riding on Electrek to look for his byline. It hasn't happened yet, but he promised us that he's gonna have some content for us soon. So keep an eye out for that. We want to thank everyone for listening live on YouTube or in your podcast app. We appreciate it if you can give us feedback on the comments or a review on iTunes and your other podcast app. We appreciate it a lot. A big thanks to our Patreon supporters too. We're now close to 250, I think. We had a few more past week and past month. That makes a big difference for us, and we're gonna be coming close to our 6 month now. We said for those that gave enough for the first 6 months, we're gonna send out our April soon. So the oh, I had my I had my I had my hoodie on me. I wanted to show it, but we have the hoodie and we have the t-shirt. So after the 6 months, we're going to switch to other rewards for a Patreon that keep supporting us after that, so that you still get something special from being an excellent supporter for us. So we're going to keep you updated on that, but you can go to patreon.com/Electrek for more information. So thanks a lot. Have a good week. We're going to see you next time.
Take it easy.